Thank you. It's great to see such a large crowd. We had cold beverages and we were in Wisconsin. We call this a fest. This is a lot of people here. It's really good to see. We share one thing in common, or two things actually, coming from Wisconsin. We count on the rain and the erosion, and that's why we're here today. So I brought a couple landowners with me. Who better to be an example of conservation and farming? I got Jack Herricks, who is a dairy farmer by Cashton, Wisconsin, and I got Scott Dahl. He's a beef farmer, but he's also a contractor that actually builds a lot of the conservation work that I've been doing over the years. I've been a soil and water conservationist for Monroe County for the past 25 years. It's kind of like one-stop shopping. I go out to the landowners, look at issues, come up with solutions, design and oversee the project, secure funding, and which I'm pretty fortunate in Wisconsin you can do that. I'm originally from Minnesota, so it's kind of welcome home, kind of coming across the river, so that was kind of nice, get to talk to Minnesotans. Even though my zip code has changed. I'm going to get this to work now.
Oh. Switch on the side. Bob?
Yes?
I think I switched it off on the side there.
You did.
On.
Yeah, there you go. Just missed it. Anyway, my allegiance is still strong. I still bleed purple, even though it's stressful at times in Wisconsin. Monroe County. Well put. Monroe County, we're rich in natural resources. If you look at the different land uses that are going on, we got half the county is in woods. We got a lot of deer, or we did have. We have cold water streams, brook trout. We have some, I'm going to say the most miles of brook trout water, some in the driftless area or the state of Wisconsin. We have a great resource there. And then we got Fort McCoy. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Fort McCoy. They got about 60,000 acres in the north central part of the county. And then we have quite a bit of public land, and as you can see, the cropland composes about 200,000 acres. We also have a pretty good cranberry industry, and within all that, we have farmers trying to eke out a living on the landscape. So, as you can see, we're a little bit out of our element. We live in a driftless area. Smiles there is quite about 3 hours from Mankato. And as Patrick mentioned earlier, this area is affected by the glacier. Well, in the unglaciated or driftless area, we were affected by the outwash. So we were surrounded by glaciers, which didn't affect Monroe County. And basically, if you drive down along the Mississippi River, it looks like it was just scoured, silver, tore off. It's from the outwash. And we call this area the coulee region. In the coulee region, farming, as you look in the lower right, is more of an art, farming on the contour. It's nothing to have farm fields that are 1 acre in size, and level is considered 6 to 8% slope. It's not uncommon to see farming in the 15 to 20% slope on the contour. So there's a lot of challenges that the farming community have. Besides the slope, it's the soils. If you look at the top left corner up there, if you look, that white line up there, there's just a thin blanket of black dirt on there. That's our topsoil. That's what the farmers are using up on the ridge tops to grow their crops. That's covering heavy clay, which is overburdened with the limestone, the dolomitic limestone. You can find that 16 feet down, and sometimes you can find that 4 feet down. If you do encounter and you want to remove it, generally it will only be removed with dynamite. You're not going to rip that out. And we have had projects where that was used. And if you look over here, remember I told you that topsoil is about 6 inches thick. Down here on this slide, it looks pretty thick. It's about a foot or so. In this picture, we're on the valley floor. So those farms up here are contributing to the valley floor soil. So that topsoil eroded off the top and filled the valley floors. And if you look, this picture was taken 2 weeks ago with the snow melt, no waterway in place, and we got a gully. And this material is being transported down to the streams lower in the watershed. And if you look at that white line, that represents the Barrett A horizon, or where the topsoil was before white man settled the area. And we keep adding to the top of that horizon. Actually, Scott was on this project. We did a stream bank restoration project, and the banks were 8-9 foot tall, and that original topsoil level was about 6 feet below. So a lot of deposition, a lot of soil movement. So if you've been on the interstate traveling east, across the river, through La Crosse, and if you hooked up to 94, you went through Monroe County. If you're driving through Monroe County, it's kind of deceiving. You wouldn't know it's the driftless area because you drive on 990, you go over one hill, and you think that's the driftless area. Well, that actually was the watershed divide between the Wisconsin River and the Mississippi River basin. So everything to the south is pretty well defined in the driftless area, real rough, coulee region type. And the star represents for these two guys and some of the conservation work that we've done in the past in this slideshow. We'll discuss some of the practices. And then I forgot to tell you that this is where the most active dairies are too. It's a very competitive area. This is just a common picture in the valley floor of a gully. And we address gullies up on the ridge tops, and then we're also looking at gully issues on the valley floors. This is just a common place. And we always talk about the rain. That's one thing that Patrick mentioned. In the last 10 years, the intensity and duration of the rains has changed quite a bit. It's not a matter of will we ever get 100 or 200 or 300 year flood? It's just a matter of when. It's becoming more frequent. And I got this quote from a couple landowners many moons ago that said, "It's only a problem when it rains." Yeah, it is a problem. That's why I have a job. But the focus up in the uplands is looking at the gully heads. And you guys, the common name of ravines, we consider them gullies in Wisconsin. So we're looking at the gully lip. This area here, obviously it's encroaching the cropland and becomes an issue when it's more active. So what I'm going to touch on is just a few of the common practices that we use in these situations. And I'm not going to get into specifics cost-wise. I'll leave that up to the contractor. He can speak on that behalf. But this is considered a small dam. Small dams are using PVC pipes. The fills are less than 15 feet in height. And you're probably talking 1,500 to 2,000 yards of fill or less. Large dams, we get into those corrugated metal pipes and big emergency spillways, moving quantities of material, bringing in clay, packing with sheep's foot or scrapers. These get into some big projects. And then you can also get in these valley floors, you get in a combination of a dam and a grass waterway situation. Here's a classic example of a grass waterway. This didn't exist for years. I drove up past this road. Anytime you had a rain event, this was farmed parallel to the road, mower plowed and disked. Anytime you had a rain event, they'd have to get the town snowplow out and get the sediment off the town road. After we got a landowner, basically sold the property, changed hands, got the new landowner interested in doing waterway work, we laid out 6,000 feet of waterway. Another example, this is a rock stilling basin inlet, and then which leads out to a grass waterway. Why we're putting that here is there's a major highway at the background here with two culverts. So we want to get rid of that energy before we let it go into the waterway. And the other thing about this site is it's on a main road. The public's well aware of where the problem issues are, and so this is more complaint driven. People complaining about this ditch here, erosion, and that's how the contact was made to get this problem resolved. And the other thing is with grass waterways running across the valley floors, you have to make sure the outlets are stable. Typically we put in these wood toe walls and then put rock behind them to drop them in a stream or a stable ditch. We don't want to create another problem. Here's another example. This ditch or gully was basically like this forever, and the farm switched hands. Typically that's what happens, and then you can get the conservation work done. We had a perennial spring going up through here. DNR deemed it non-navigable, which means we can actually tile that out. And we hooked up the tile above the shed up here, brought that along, released it as it went into a bridge, and then shaped that waterway. And we have a wood toe wall here. Just another picture of construction showing the spring flow running and building a wood toe wall. It's a little more hand labor, a little more expensive. When the contractor has to get out of his equipment, the costs go up, more time. And it's probably a job they don't like to do, right, Scott? Diversions. We're picking up gullies that are coming off of cropland and dumping into a stream, so we're concentrating them all to one point, and so we're going to release it into a rock-lined waterway. Another option. To get around farmsteads, costs go up again. We'll put in a diversion. We got gullies coming off this pasture, and we're going to outlet it into this grass waterway. Of course, the farm's got cattle, so we got to get that cattle across that waterway in a stable atmosphere. So we're basically putting in you could go concrete or rock. In this case, we're using a rock crossing. And the other one is the concrete land waterway. With all the roof runoff and the amount of traffic, this is on Jack's farm, put in a concrete line waterway along with the wood floor. So with this, I mentioned a county before was talking about cost sharing. And the cost sharing programs that we use today is the Soil and Water Resource Management Funds in our county. That's about $70,000. And also we have the EQIP dollars, which are NRCS funds. And we allocate about $600,000 every year on different projects. Of that, so close to $700,000, I'd say 40% are used on upland treatment. If I go back and look at the watershed program years ago, that's how I started working in the Middle Kickapoo watershed program. And the goal was to address 60% of the gullies within that watershed. So that means every farm I go to and he wants to participate in the watershed, he's got to control 60% of the gullies. So the state DNR program cost shared 70%, and we piggybacked 75% of the remaining cost of the landowner. So ultimately, we're cost sharing 92.5% on all the gully control practices in that watershed at that time. Very successful. It's not hard to sell gully control practices when you're carrying 92.5% cost share. And so I've been doing this for 25 years. That was the most successful route as far as getting my practices on the land. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jack, and he can speak on his experiences.
Okay, thanks, Bob. You know, I use Bob as a resource for a lot of things, and I have to apologize to him. I forgot, I just didn't think of it yesterday. I was asked this question. I didn't think of him as my resource person, but the question I was asked is, what do the Minnesota Vikings and a junk car have in common?
Hopefully you got to ride home, right?
Of course, the answer is neither one has a title. And I didn't think of asking you for the answer, Bob. I'm part of a dairy farm family between my wife and myself and our 3 adult children. We farm outside of Cashton, and we crop about 1,200 acres and have about 600 dairy cows and another 600 or so replacements that we raise. You can see this is a picture taken on top of the ridge on the home farm, looking down at where our buildings are located. I'd just like to point out that we're a century farm. I'm the 3rd generation, and my children are the 4th. Something that we're kind of proud of, that we could eke out a living for that long on these hills that we farm. In our part of the world, we farm from the top of the ridge down about as far as we can go until it gets too steep. We don't really have any bottom land that we farm at all. On these contours here, we're able to use trucks to haul manure and trucks to haul silage, and 8 to 10 to 12% slope seem to be pretty easy to work with. Part of my conservation ethic that I remember as a youth, when I was maybe 12 years old or so, my dad was making hay on a neighbor's farm, and we were helping him, and the neighbor retired from farming. He was in his upper 70s, and he was out raking hay, and there were some issues with baler tying or something, and John stopped by to see what was happening and see if he could do anything or whatever, and he was standing there, and I standing next to him. He started telling me, he says, you know, where we are here, he says, when I was a boy, he said, this is was the best land that we had in our farm. And he says, over time, he said, it's all gone down there, and he pointed to the bottom of the hill, how the soil had moved over his lifetime. He said that the method they used when he was young to control erosion, he said they farmed up and down the hill, they'd cultivate the corn, and if it rained too hard and they got ditches, they'd cultivate it again to fill the ditches back in. And that's made a lasting impression on me, that simple statement that he made. This shows a view of our farm and some of the land that we farm, and you can see the contours there. We alternate between corn and alfalfa, and use nearly all of it for feeding our dairy herd. Here's a list of some of the conservation practices that we use on our farm. And a practice that's not listed there that we've started using in the last 6-8 years or so is, as we have grown our dairy herd and used more of our corn acres for silage, we've started making it a routine practice that after silage is harvested in the fall, that we get in there and seed them acres, grow them with winter rye, so that we can hopefully get a green up in the fall and have it take off and green up in the spring, so that we reduce the amount of bare ground time that we have. Here's more of a overview of, on the upper left corner there, you can see kind of in the bottom is where our buildings are, our farmstead is situated, and off to the left here, or the right hand side rather, is more land that we own, and you can see the contours on there. Where these little X's showed up would be areas that we've built erosion control structures, and these have been done over quite a number of years. Some of these are, you know, our farm is situated such that we're kind of on top of the ridge, and so we have land that drains into 3 different watersheds. And part of being a landowner, you know, is responsibility, and I feel very strongly about sometimes you need to do a erosion control practice that maybe isn't necessarily going to provide our farm with the greatest benefit, but as being a steward of God's resources, we need to be responsible that if we own the land where that structure needs to be installed, even though we're not going to be the largest beneficiary of it, we need to get that practice installed. And it not only helps for flood control and prevent the erosion of these gullies, but it's improved the wildlife habitat on our farm. considerably over time, and our family likes to deer hunt, and it provides us with a means for that entertainment as well. Here's a picture of a structure that, as it was finished and before it was seeded, you can see by the color of the leaves that it was done in the fall of the year. I'd like to point out here that probably in some of the earlier structures we did, them trees had probably all been removed. We kind of had this thing that we thought we had to have a clear site to put a structure in it. Now when Bob gets the structure staked out, we kind of look at it and try to figure out, okay, how many of these trees can we leave in place? And it's not only for wildlife, but for beauty, and it just, it kind of creates almost like a park-like atmosphere around a lot of these structures. And I think it just really enhances the natural beauty of the whole location. In the upper left here, you can see we were getting an area in that structure seeded. Where we can, we'll drive around with a no-till drill and seed it that way, and then on the steeper areas, we'll take a hand seeder and walk back and forth and crank the seed out. In the bottom right there is the area after it's been mulched. Well, when a project is finished, we try to make it Scott will leave it when he's finished, it's ready to be seeded. We don't have to do any more finishing work or anything on it. So we make it a high priority to get out there, get it seeded, get it mulched, so that if we get a gentle rain, get the seed started and get a green up going. These pictures here, the bottom left there kind of explains what it's about. On our farm, we've been planting no-till corn since 1985. We've tried to improve our practices over time on that, and it was getting into no-till was a socially critiqued thing. As far as farmers in the neighborhood, it was, I was accused of everything from being lazy to being unintelligent to not knowing what I was doing, and it was at a time when you couldn't, the equipment wasn't available as far as hiring a neighbor or something to come and do some acres for you. Just nobody had it. So we made the commitment that that's what we was going to do, and we were going to make it work, and we bought a planter, and even the equipment dealer didn't really know how to set it up, and it was a trial and error thing until we figured out how to do it. Like our youngest son is, well, just today I guess he's 31, and he has no clue how to make a moldboard plow work. He's never even seen one work on our farm, and he may remember a little bit back when we done some chisel plowing, but that would have been when he was quite young. We drill our alfalfa, we no-till that, and the only tillage that we ever do is if we get some tracks that we have to level out from a manure spreader or something like that. But besides the soil saving, the labor saving, another thing is that it saves us the bother in our land. There's a lot of rocks there, and if you no-till and leave these rocks covered up, you don't have to go through that laborious task in the spring of the year, picking stones and doing that. And nearly all these sites you've seen where the X's were, there's probably pretty good sized rock piles of field rock that have been picked over the years and dumped off there. And you could drive around our farm now and probably see very few places where you'd see these pile of field rock anymore, because it's a job that we just virtually don't have to do anymore. The only negative I can think of of not having to pick rock anymore is the fact that that was kind of a proving ground for the youngsters, because if they were 6, 7 years old, you could put them on a tractor, because all they had to do was somehow make it so go ahead and go in the slowest gear possible, and with a lot of people nearby picking rocks, it was a place for them to learn how to start driving a tractor. So we can surely work around that. This here shows some contours that we relayed last spring. We're changing the kind of the look of our farm somewhat. In fact, as we farm more acres, we've gone to bigger equipment, and these contours are, we now plant corn with a 24-row, 20-inch planter, and so we mark out 100-foot contours. You can see we use the no-till drill to make the contour marks, and with 100-foot strips we can make one pass with the planter, and the planter has row shutoffs on it, so we can, if the contours get just a little wider or narrower, because nothing's perfect in our world, then you can finish off the middle of the field with the last pass over. Here's another picture of the same contours as growing season developed. We don't use any direct seeding on our farm. You can see here this in the forefront is where we planted oats and cut that off for forage, and the alfalfa is growing up in there. Here's another picture. This is of the same site where the maples were orange and golden colored. On the previous slide, here's the site after the winter rye has grown up, and you can see that's another kind of design change we've made over time. A lot of these structures has made them so that the basin area is a little bit deeper, so that they hold water, not a lot of water usually, but hold water for quite an extended period of time, some of them all summer long, just for wildlife. And if depending on how the particular site is, if we need to, we'll like over dig them somewhat, so that we can put in a sheet of like bunker plastic, spread that out, and then push, Scott would push like a foot of soil over that, so that we get kind of a barrier there and get them to be watertight that way. This is a snapshot of another structure. This is one that was built when our main watershed, the Middle Kickapoo, was in a priority watershed. And like this structure here, I don't remember how much it cost, but with as Bob showed in his slides, the Fed's paying 70% and the county going 22.5%. On a site like this to get this project finished, and if the landowner would do the seeding, the mulching, and probably pick up the stones and whatnot before he done them two practices, we have virtually zero out-of-pocket expenses on them. You can just get kind of an idea here, the slope of the land, how it goes up from where that structure is located. Another practice that we do on our farm is, because we have a lot of traffic with silage trucks and manure spreaders and whatever, is we do, I call it improved field roads. When we build them roads, Scott would cut out a trench like about a foot deep and 15 feet wide, and we'll put in probably a foot of breaker run and get that packed down and then cover it with gravel to get a good surface, and it allows us to be able to access our fields when we need to. And another thing, it's a real safety practice. If you get caught in the rain when you're up on top of the ridge and you got a half or 3/4 of a mile to travel downhill to get to the highway. You surely don't want to travel that on a dirt road when it's just rained, because you just hunt, you'd have to leave whatever you have set up in the field, because it would be just as bad as trying to travel on ice. I guess I don't remember if I said or not, but we have about 6.5 miles or so of them improved roads on our farm. You can see here's another erosion control practice, and I think you need to have a philosophy of when you do them that you're doing it as a long-term investment, that it's not just for this year or the next few years, that it's going to be something that's going to be there for a long time. You know, and as I said earlier, all of our children make their living off of working on our farm full time, and we need to view this farming as a generational business that is going to be there for future generations, hopefully, of our family to make their living from. And so it behooves us to keep this, as Bob was showing us, little shallow topsoil that we do have, to keep that in place where it is. I guess with that, I'm ready to turn it over to Scott.
Bid you all a good afternoon. This is my first time in front of a crowd of people. Bob told me about a week or two ago, hey, you want to go to this Ravine meeting over in Minnesota, Mankato? I said, I've been there many times. My daughters go to school there at the university. So I thought, yeah, that'd be all right. He didn't tell me there was going to be like 150 people. He thought 25 to maybe 30, but I'll do the best I can, okay? I've known Bob for, I guess, 25 years. He strolled in on my farm one day. Actually, I didn't own the farm at the time. My parents still did. And wanted to know if I'd be interested in doing some conservation practices. Like, well, you're talking to the wrong guy. You have to talk to my dad. And my dad, well, he wasn't too much for it. Didn't think it was anything that, it was going to cost money. And just didn't think it was anything that needed to be done. But after talking to Bob for a while, I kind of bent my dad's arm a little harder, and by telling him, I talked him into a couple of structures on the farm. And I got to say, at that time, I didn't know a whole lot about erosion or water control or anything. But putting those structures in on our farm was like a big step forward. It made a tremendous difference. They were located farther up the valley from where the buildings are. And whenever we get an inch rain, or maybe a little more at times, we always have a big flow of water coming down through the farm, getting closer to the buildings all the time. We're located right in a small valley, small crack, gully. After the installation of those two structures, well, that really turned my dad's head also. So we ended up with more. That it took years to do it. You're not going to do this in a 5-year period. It takes time to get to that point. But anyway, a little introduction from Bob here. He apparently snuck a picture there. I don't know where the laser is on here, but apparently he sent that picture from my mom behind my back. I don't know if you folks can read it, but it says, I can't finish this right now, Mommy. I'll be back in a month. I don't know if that's typical of all contractors or not. But, he grabbed just a shot of my logo on one of my trucks, and one of my early dozers. That's been a few years ago now, but had to figure out a way to try and stay warm on these things. I don't know how many of you guys in here are contractors, but you know what I'm talking about. It gets cold. Well, I got involved with doing contractor work about 14 years ago. I still have my farms, but I do also a lot of stream bank work, which is in our area, in that watershed, but throughout Monroe County also. There's a lot of creeks and streams, and I really get a personal satisfaction out of doing those. Just seeing the looks on the landowners' faces when they realize that that stream is no longer going to take any more of my field. You know, we put a stop to it with that stream bank protection. Bobby's always messing with me. This particular job, I guess, I was cutting a core there for a dam. Actually, that job there, you saw slides on Jack's little presentation. That's part of construction of a dam. You have to cut a core and then recompact that with good clay to secure the integrity of the dam. And sometimes he questions my work, I guess, I don't know. But, this other photo here, I'm not sure. I just haven't been able to come up with anything for that. I think maybe I'm looking for Bob. I'm looking down in the trash rack. And I think he's trying to hide on me that day for some reason. I don't know. And this one here appears like I caught him driving up that guy's driveway out of the corner of my eye, and I'm just trying to get away from him. Here's another dam that has been constructed in the last couple of years. This particular dam, this guy here is a maple syrup farmer, and he's got some over 5,000 maple trees tapped on his property, and then some adjoining property to his own. Grows a big garden every year, and had a bit of an erosion problem starting there. So we designed that dam to hold water so he can actually pump water out of there to irrigate his big garden that he's got. This dam is, I forget the yardage in that now, but it probably is, across the whole top of that dam is probably about 150 feet, and a cost for a dam like that back there, you know, would run you around an $8,000 dam to do that. This is a aerial of my farm, which you can see those red dots are where we've had structures installed. I didn't do 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. I did not do. I was not running heavy equipment at the time. But there's three in the lower portion there toward the left that I actually did on my farm itself. And Jack had talked earlier about the contour crops stripping. This particular photo here, I had rented that main ridge there. There's approximately 180 acres up there, and it's highly erodible. The guy I rented it to, he turned it into a corn farm. He did no-till it, but in doing so, here come the ditches, because it's that steep without the contour strips. Well, I was fortunate enough to get a new renter that is back on track. He's got everything stripped now, and the ditching problem is gone away. This is just another picture of a finished dam. We like to design them there to hold some water, like Jack had said, for the wildlife. I was born and raised on my farm. Never saw ducks. Never saw turtles. Where did they come from? The turtles especially, I still don't know. They were there, but had no place to, no habitat. But they're thriving now, and We go up there anytime. Now I take my grandkids up there and we look at the ducks and the turtles. This particular dam here actually was built on my property. You can see there's quite a difference in height from where that tree stands to up toward the top of the ridge there where the corn is. You get an inch of rain and your neighbor down below, he's got a problem, because here it comes. And this particular dam here, the neighbor that lives just down the valley from me, he was continually having flood problems. His garage is located on one side of the ditch and his house is on the other. Well, since the installation of this dam, he no longer has a flood issue. Water running in the basement of his house and through his garage. So, like Jack had said earlier, you can benefit your neighbor. It's not really helping me a whole bunch other than it did control some erosion that was taking place, but it was a great benefit to my neighbor. Also, I do waterway work. There's a lot of waterways in Wisconsin with the hills. You guys have some hill here, but if you've ever been in our part of the woods there, it's quite a bit different. So waterways are also a big part of conservation there. Is there any questions? Well, it's treated lumber, so probably 25, 30 years before you have to replace that. So I guess I'd like to just say something to the landowners. Get to know your people from the county. Sometimes they may come up with an idea and you may think, oh, that's totally off the wall. I mean, what's he thinking? But if you just give it a chance, you can see that it's just simple little things that aren't going to cost a lot of money. A lot of cost share money out there if you apply for it. You're not going to get it done this year. If you're thinking you're going to do something this year, no, it's going to take a year for sure before you can finally get that in practice implemented. But give it time and work with them. There's a lot of good people that are out there to help.